You're listening to the Inside Podcast Network, podcasts for the enterprise.
Hello, and we're back with Inside the Microsoft Cloud. So Pete and I, we're here today. It's the last day of the conference. The halls are starting to empty pretty quickly here. But we thought we'd give everyone a little wrap-up of the week, just kind of talk about, more or less what we talked about in our day one video. Just kind of talk about what was announced, how we kind of felt the conference has gone, and some of the trends that we've been seeing.
Coffee, daughters, dogs, no big whoop.
Yeah, so Pete, I feel like we're still kind of in the place where we started at the beginning of the week, where there's been a lot of things announced, but the documentation, the clarification, the specifics of a lot of these announcements are still coming.
Well, yeah, so it feels like we're coming down from a high, right? So when you open a conference with the wrapper common, followed by announcement after announcement after announcement, you're sort of at the peak right there in the first 2 hours, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, in fact, I was at the airport. I flew in Monday morning, and so at 9 a.m. I was standing on the walk, ready to make my journey here, and so I actually listened and watched on my phone all the way in. Yeah. Frankly, I think we were all surprised by at least a couple of the announcements. I mean, you and I are in the MVP program where we're, let's say, reasonably well connected to product teams, and I think there were surprises for everyone.
Yeah, that's certainly the case. The big one that comes to mind for me is the whole Azure Stack thing. So there's been a lot of talk this week. It's probably the thing people are talking about the most, at least in our circles.
Yeah, absolutely. So Azure Stack, and what is that exactly under the hood? What are those foundational components? Is Azure Stack WAP 2.0, or is Windows Azure Pack something different? So, at this point, I think I'm going to, save it for the product team to clarify over the coming weeks. I think it's fairly important that we see some clarification and some roadmap, and I have no doubt that we're going to see that sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I mean, the whole community's been asking about it. I know the booth for Azure Stack, they had people there the whole time. It was very busy. That whole area was busy. Apparently, we'll see an actual public preview in October. So hopefully, long before then, like you were saying, we get some more details on that, so that because it's got some people worried, a lot of questions out there. When there's unknowns, it tends to rile people up a little bit.
Yeah, there's always something to worry folks. So back in 2010, folks were worried when they heard cloud for the first time, right? When Azure came out and how that would impact their job. So if it's not Azure Stack, it would be something else, and the world will not end and the sky will not fall, I predict.
So, Pete, other than some of the things we've talked about already, what was one of your favorite things that you saw here at the conference?
So I think so I'm a data center and automation guy, right? And one of the things that was most exciting for me had nothing to do with data center automation, it had to do with user experience. So seeing Windows 10, seeing Continuum, where we saw a user experience where we went from a desktop to a laptop to a tablet to a phone. And I think the demo I was watching was with Microsoft Word, and the key phrase I heard in there is the experience is with Continuum. You see the continuity because it's not a similar code base, it's the same code base, right? We have a single code base end to end, and I think that's Microsoft finally realizing this vision that we saw. That they hoped to have executed in Windows 8 and maybe fell a little bit short, right? We saw some challenges to adoption there that maybe could have been predicted, maybe not, around the start menu, etc. But I was really impressed with that demo in particular, and certainly all the announcements that surrounded that with Office 2016 and the like. So.
Yeah, I really think that later this year, it's going to be a point where people can really I want to say reboot them, maybe not themselves, but reboot their technology. So we have Windows 10, we have all these new products coming out, we have vNext, all these things coming out in the next 6 months to a year or so. And it's going to be an interesting time because we're going to be at the point where we can really change the devices we work on, how we work on our devices, as well as the actual technologies that we're implementing for our businesses.
Yeah, I was over at I was over at the Azure Resource Management booth, which is another story. And the man I went over there to talk to pulled out his Nokia 1520. It's a giant phone, and I was thinking, boy, if I had a Nokia 1520 with Windows 10 running on there, that would be pretty okay. So I think the thought around reboot is absolutely true. There are going to be things that we can do, thanks to Continuum, thanks to that integration story, that aren't going to be possible if we're carrying around iOS and Android and Windows devices. So.
I'm just imagining you have your phone, and then you hook it up to a Bluetooth keyboard and mouse. You hook it up to a TV or something, and then you're RDPing, and you can administer all your cloud. It's going to be some interesting times here in the future, I think. I'm
imagining just throngs of people with a blue mustache from just drinking all that Kool-Aid. Yeah, it's going to happen. It's going to happen.
Yeah. So I think it'd probably be worth just getting our thoughts out there, what we thought of the conference in general. I think there's certainly been some complaints out there, and I think they're valid. I just have to say, I agree with some of the things everyone said. It's a huge conference. There's going to be long lines. The catering, the food situation is going to be questionable for conference goers sometimes. There's not really going to be I think, an easy solution to that. They did say that they're coming back here next year in 2016.
Yeah, so certainly if Microsoft does their homework, and I think typically they do, we did see some congestion that was surprising. So I heard some folks mention they were 10 or 15 minutes without moving very far, and I did hear that the food was consistently not so nice, if we're being politically correct about that, and I don't disagree with a lot of that. On the plus side, a venue of this size is great for such a large group of people. Chicago is a fantastic conference city, so I can say I, for one, had dinner meetings all around, and you have great entertainment and great food within walking distance or a short cab ride. So being a Houstonite, or a Houstonian as we call ourselves, I think this is a better conference city than my home, what I call my hometown. So.
Yeah, there were some. One of the benefits I noticed from the size is just, I was staffing the service manager booth and a few other booths, and there are so many people here that people who may not normally be interested in that technology did get a chance to swing through the booths and learn a lot. So, it's interesting because the session content for things like System Center, perfect example. There weren't all that many System Center sessions, but at the other hand, all these people who wouldn't normally be working with System Center can learn about that down at the expo, and it's like, I don't know, we're not going too deep, but we're kind of expanding the width of our knowledge.
So having gone to my first Microsoft conference back in the year 2000-ish, when I was 17, I remember we would have a session followed by a chalk talk where that speaker would roll right out of that session and into another smaller room, a little theater, where we could ask questions, whiteboard ideas, etc. And I think the out in the expo where we have the pods with the various experts is really an improvement on that model, because now we're not, and I can remember back in those days I was focusing on directory services, on messaging, and I can remember following the Active Directory folks around, watching their sessions, doing the chalk talks. I got to meet the guy that was responsible for the algorithm, the routing algorithm in Exchange. And that sort of thing is terribly exciting. Now we can find these guys for hours at a stretch, standing in front of a booth next to a whiteboard, and particularly in that Azure area, this year, we wore out a couple of whiteboards. It was a fantastic session in that respect, because they didn't just have Microsoft people there. They had program managers, they had feature owners standing in those areas. So, that's as good as it gets for my money.
Yeah, I agree. I think I'm excited to come back next year. I think, like you said, they can only improve on things, and it was already a great conference. So I feel like people learned a lot. There may be some inconveniences here at large conference, but whatever, that happens.
As they say, love and technical conferences are better the second time around. So I think it'll be smoother when we come back next year.
Yeah. So Pete, unless you have anything you'd like to talk about real quick, you have a plane to catch. I have a car ride to go on. So unless you have any closing thoughts or things you think we should discuss, I think we're about ready to wrap this.
Azure IaaS V2. Check it out. Enough said.
Enough said. All right, so for the Inside the Microsoft Cloud, it's myself, Lee Berg, Pete Zerger, and of course we have Dan back in Australia editing the videos and doing that work, staying up late while we're trying to upload videos to him. We just want to thank everyone for watching throughout the week. I know we have a lot of cool stuff coming down the pipes, so we're going to have a lot of online content coming real soon.
Yeah, thanks, Lee.
Thanks.